Have you ever changed something about yourself just to fit in? Maybe just the way you talk, the way you dress, the things you admit you like. Sometimes it's things you choose to show, parts of yourself you hide. Because I think a lot more of us do this than we realize. And sometimes we do it for so long, we forget what was ours and what was adaptation. Because I know I did. When I moved to America from Ethiopia at 15. I thought people would think it was cool. I thought they would have questions, want to hear stories, just be fascinated by this place on the other side of the world. That is not what happened. The boys at my Catholic school made fun of me from being Africa. They would say things like, "You guys run around naked and have those hungry kids." And I remember being so confused because I didn't see it coming. I had this very innocent expectation that people would be curious. So instead, I learned pretty quickly that fitting in felt safer than standing out. Anyone else? Like, have you ever walked into a room and immediately started scanning for what version of yourself would be most accepted there? Yeah, that became me. I started changing little things, then bigger things. I had this British accent from growing up in Ethiopia and going to a British school, which would have been so sexy right now. But I learned how to roll my R's differently instead. I changed the way I pronounced words, just changed the whole way I was speaking because I wanted one less thing that made me different. And honestly, I got really good at it. By the time I got to college, most people had no idea I was an American. I mean, did any of you, if I hadn't mentioned it? Mission accomplished, right? Except here's the problem. The things we change to belong are often the very things we spend years trying to get back. That was the lesson. I didn't get it immediately, but decades later, of course. So at 15, I was living with my relatives because my family was back home, and my aunt used to cook amazing Ethiopian food. But the spices would cling to the walls, to our clothes, to everything. If you know, you know. And I was so embarrassed. So I bought one of those clothes organizers and I kept my clothes in the garage. Yep, because I don't want anyone at school to smell Ethiopian food on me. Looking back, that breaks my heart a little because imagine being so desperate to belong that you start hiding pieces of yourself that were never the problem. And before we judge teenage Leah, tell me we don't still do this at our old age. Maybe not with accents or with food, but with other things like your personality, your faith, your dreams, your age, your interests, your story, just to fit in. The things that make you different. We learn what gets approval, then we start editing ourselves. And eventually we stop asking, who am I? And start asking, who do I need to be? Does that sound right? That question will wear you out because the answer keeps changing depending on who's in the room. And this is where things got interesting for me. Years later, I found myself doing the exact same thing in different ways. I didn't always want to dance online because I thought people wouldn't take me seriously. I just kept editing myself, trying to manage how people perceived me. And maybe that's why the story still matters because it isn't really about Ethiopia. It isn't really about me being 15. It's about belonging. It's about the exhausting things we do to earn acceptance. And the funny thing is, the people who love you most just need you to be you. And one of the biggest realizations I had was I spent years trying to become unnoticeably American, and then I spent years trying to become unapologetically myself, which is ironic, right? The things we change to belong are often the very things we spend years trying to recover. And there's actually a reason for that. Psychologists call it self concept. Your brain likes congruence. It likes when who you are on the inside matches what you show on the outside. So every time we edit ourselves to fit expectations, there's a cost. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, because part of you always knows. Part of you always knows when you are performing, when you are shrinking, and that's why becoming yourself feels so freeing. You're no longer managing versions of yourself, you're just living. Honestly, I think a lot of women are exhausted, and I don't think it's because life is hard. They're just carrying too many versions of themselves. You have your work version, the mom version, the church version, the social media version. And eventually you get tired. And maybe that's why coming home to yourself matters so much because you're finally letting go of who you were never supposed to be. I'm Leah, and I make these videos to remind you that you are not behind, you are allowed to take up space, and life is still inviting you to the dance floor. So come dance with me. Stay on beat. Bye.